Emmalynn.
I'm Jessica.
And today we will be doing our July wrap-up with a feature from June to start.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, actually, I didn't forget to mention, I forgot to record altogether in Goodreads that I read.
The Housemate is watching.
The Housemate is watching, yeah. In the month of June. Totally forgot about it. I think because I started it and read it like kind of in between books, maybe that's why. But yeah, what are your thoughts? Because you read this book too.
I think that if it was a standalone, I would have liked it more than I did as something being a part of a series.
Mm-hmm.
But when you understand that like it takes place 10 years after the second book, it kind of makes you feel less interested because it seems like kind of a cash grab almost.
Yeah.
Even though it's on Kindle Unlimited, so I feel like she's probably not making as much money from it as she could be. I don't know. It's like if it literally just came out as a standalone, it was like this mom moves in and there's some weird neighbors and blah blah blah. That would have been different, but it's like I forgot what happened in the last book, but really it was a time jump.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just didn't feel connected.
The main girl is Nina, right?
Mm.
No.
Millie.
Where did you get Nina? I don't know where I got that from. I don't know. Millie. I feel like in the first two books, I liked her, and in this book, she got on my nerves. And I think part of it was, I feel like she just had like questionable decision-making skills, if you will, even from the fact that like at the very beginning of the book, they move into this house that they keep talking about how they can't afford. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, then why? So I don't know. It just, she just kind of got on my nerves.
Towards her husband specifically.
Yeah, it was
also
weird.
frustrating.
It was weird.
Considering her relationship with the guy. He's in the second book. And like the relationship with that book was very different than this one. But
yeah. Anyways, it was okay.
It was fine. I wasn't thrilling.
Yeah. It was a little drug out, I felt like, too. I would give it like a 3.
Yeah.
Star.
I feel like the first two felt like thrillers and this felt like a
mystery.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay. What else did you read this month? Because you read more than I did.
The first book I finished this month, I totally put these all in the right order, but upside down, was Reckless by Lauren Roberts, and this was another disappointment. It was fun. Definitely feels like a for the fans book. Like it felt like almost a novella, like the content did, because nothing happened plot-wise. Literally nothing.
It was, a lot of people have said that.
It was just basically a romance book to get them like connected again before the third book. And if they have like another fallout in the third book, considering that this whole book was them like being together again, I just don't understand how that would work. The ending of this book was crazy though, and it makes me super excited for the third book. And I do love, like, I love the potential that this had. Like, I feel like we could have just had a duology, and it's like she got signed for a trilogy, and so that's what we get. It wasn't a bad book, but it's not what I was expecting for a fantasy by any means.
Yeah. First book I read for the month of July was The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. I've only read one other Riley Sager book, and that was, what is it? The one that we both read?
The Only One Left?
Yeah, The Only One Left. And I love that book. But that's the only book I have to compare it to. So I wanted to read something else. And I heard a lot of people talking about how this one was perfect for summer because it's set at a summer camp. So this follows our main girl. I don't remember her name. But when she was a teenager, went to this summer camp, and this girl ends up disappearing while she's a camper. And so, like, her whole life, she has always wondered what has happened to her. Well, then she gets an invitation to come back to this summer camp that has been closed since that girl disappeared. So they're going to open it up now, and the owner wants her to come back and be one of the counselors, but more so, not really a counselor, like an art teacher.
How traumatizing.
Yeah. And she thinks it'll be like healing for her and give her closure and all this. But like in the back of her mind, she's like, no, I'm going to go find out what happened to this girl. So that's what she tries to do.
When does it take place?
It was,
like, is it 80s and like modern day?
Yeah.
So does it go back and forth?
Yes, it does go back and forth. And I found like the past to be more interesting than the present. So I kind of like wanted to read that part
more
of the
like
book.
suspense,
Yeah.
probably.
And I don't know, like it was a good vibe, like for a kind of spooky summer read, but it was a little slow in parts, but I didn't dislike it. I just didn't love it. So
I feel like all of his books would be really good, like 80s.
This would be a good, it would be a good movie for sure. Yeah.
Stranger Things vibes. Same
Yeah.
with the only one left. Okay, next up, I'm just going to talk about, I read the Paradise Trilogy, and I only have 2 of the books, because I read the first one digitally. I'm on the Elin Hildebrand train. I get it. I get what people mean when they say she's like a guilty pleasure. I read the 3rd book. Which one is it? Trouble in Paradise in a day. Like, we were on a road trip. I ate it up. The multiple POVs makes it so good. It's perfect. So this book follows Irene. And she gets a call one day that her husband died in St. Thomas. And he died in like a helicopter crash with this other woman who she learns he was like living a secret life with. So they go down there, and he has like this big mansion, and she goes down there with her 2 sons who are adult children, and they just kind of try to figure out what happened. They meet lots of people in the town, but his mistress's family, and just a lot of things come out. The FBI gets involved, but then there's a lot of like drama and side romances. It's reality
The vibes
TV.
are really good of that book. Like, it made me want to go there.
Yeah, they go on like boats and
The
snorkeling
food,
trips.
like the food that they talk about, all sounds so amazing.
And like, at least I know her Nantucket books are real places, but I would assume
I feel like she might have a house in St. Thomas, or she goes there
because
regularly.
at the beginning of some of these books, she'll be like, these were places
Yeah.
that existed before the hurricane.
Yeah.
They're currently being rebuilt. So like, just roll up. You can eat this food.
I know.
Do it.
I've looked it up on Pinterest.
But I would love for this to be a show. I'm hopeful
That
that she's having a show
good
come
show,
out.
yeah.
It was so good. And
I love the
honestly,
side
I loved
characters.
Irene and Huck.
Mhm.
They were my 2 favorite characters. So
And I just decided one day I was watching a Lexi video. What's her name? It's like Newly Nova or something.
Yeah.
One of her videos, and she was talking about this nonfiction book, The Many Lives of Mama Love, a memoir of lying, stealing, writing, and healing. And she was like giving a synopsis of it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds so interesting. It's by Laura Love Hardin. So it's about this woman that lives a typical white suburban, like upper class life, and she gets addicted to first pain pills, and then that turns into a heroin addiction. I'm pretty sure now, I can't remember, but she ends up like becoming so addicted to it that she's like stealing from her neighbor's mailbox like getting their credit card offers, activating their credit cards, like stealing just from like random people in parking lots at her kids' school that she knows like leave their car unlocked to support her drug addiction. Well, then her husband at the time is also an addict. They eventually get, this is all at the very beginning of the book, they eventually get caught and they both get sent to prison. So it's kind of her, or first to jail and then to prison. But it's kind of like her story of being in jail, learning how to navigate being in jail, learning how to navigate like rehabilitating after she gets out of jail and how hard that was and how no one really helps you figure that out. It was incredibly interesting. Like, I read this book in 24 hours, I'm pretty sure, because it was just like, is this really real? Like, it just sounded like something you would be watching. It doesn't seem like someone's actual life. But I really enjoyed it. I don't really rate nonfiction books because this is her life story, so I'm not gonna be like, oh, it was just kind of interesting. But it was fascinating. It was very sad at times, but she does have redemptive moments at the end and ends up getting her life back together. So if you need to hear that to make you want to read it, there you go. But I really enjoyed it. And honestly, if I was going to rate it, I would say it was pretty close to a 5-star.
Next, I read This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. This was my first Carly Fortune book, and this one has a dual timeline, and it takes place on Prince Edward Island, and we follow Lucy. Well, one of the plot lines is we follow Lucy, and times she'll vacation with her best friend, and she kind of like has a thing for her best friend's brother as soon as she gets there. And so we follow that like off and on as they go to vacation there. And then our current plot line, we follow Lucy, who is a florist, and she's doing the flowers for her best friend's wedding, still the best friend Bridget. And Bridget just runs off, and like, you don't know what's wrong. You're like, is she gonna break off the wedding? She goes to Prince Edward Island. She's like, Lucy, I need you to come here. And so what do you know? Her brother's there too, Felix. So then it's like them figuring out, are they like together, finally gonna get together and stay together instead of just like pining for each other. So yeah, I loved the Prince Edward Island vibes. I did like both of the main characters a lot, but I feel like because the past timeline was so choppy, it felt more physical, because it's like she almost left out all the emotional stuff, because it would be like 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. So it'd be like there's like one chapter every few chapters of the past. So then it's like you feel like you're being like thrown into something, almost like you're watching the like 5th episode of a season instead of starting at the beginning, because it's hard to feel like believable when they just keep talking about like all this stuff in the past, and the past is jumping around instead of just sticking to one summer and following that whole summer, which is what I would have preferred. But I did really like this. I think she has really good settings and like writing in that sense. I don't know if I'll read another one if it is past and present timeline, just because if it's choppy like this, I don't know. I didn't love that, but it was a good summer read. Adult romance. Kind of just same old, same old.
Okay, and here's where the name Nina came from. This is not a mystery. Yeah, I knew I didn't just conjure that up. Okay. I read Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is my second book of Taylor Jenkins Reid following Daisy Jones and the Six. This book was fascinating to me. And I think the reason I loved this book so much was because there is a strong family dynamic in the foreground of the story. So this follows our main character, Nina, who is a professional surfer and model. And then her brothers, Jay and Hud, and one of her brothers is also a professional surfer, and the other one is a photographer, like for surfers. So he's kind of like world renowned for his photography of surfers. And then they have a younger sister, Kit, who is also a surfer, but she's kind of still trying to like figure out where she stands in the family, because she's not like kind of come out as her own person yet. So we have them, and then we have their storyline going on that's set in the 80s. And then we're learning about their absent father, who is Mick. And Mick was a famous singer back in the, like, I guess 50s, 60s. And also, one thing about this book that Emmalynn didn't realize until I read it was Nina's husband is a famous tennis player who has an affair in this book, and it's in the summary, so it's not a spoiler, with Carrie Soto, who, sorry, I just hit you with this, who is the main character of Carrie Soto is Back. So all of her characters are kind of intertwined, I think,
which I think
is really
cool,
interesting.
They're all like different.
Well, all the
timelines, too.
historical ones, I guess. But this kind of follows the main plot of the story is this party that takes place every year at Nina's house. So it's like this famous party. Everyone who's anyone comes to this party, and it's like no expenses spared. Everyone's like drinking and doing drugs and doing what you did in the 80s if you're a famous person, and probably still do. But like a lot of things happen at this party that kind of like makes or breaks their family. So it's really a family story set in kind of this very interesting 80s Hollywood, not Hollywood, Malibu, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this Malibu, obviously. This Malibu backdrop. So the people are Hollywood actors and singers and all of that. So anyways, I really enjoyed this. I loved Nina's character growth throughout this book, and at the end I was like, get it, girl.
I feel like her books, especially the historic ones, are just so addictive.
Mm-hmm.
Like I read them all so fast.
Yeah. I would definitely give this like a 4.5, I think. Not quite a 5-star, but pretty darn close.
Okay, my last book is Luck and Last Resorts. And this is the second book in a series, but I didn't read the first one. And I don't think you have to. I was able to like piece things together, but it is like the relationship in the first book is obviously a little spoiled for you because they're also in this book. So I'll probably go back and read the first one, but if this one interests you and that one doesn't, it's not going to be a big deal. And this follows Nina and Ollie.
Another Nina.
Yeah, we have 2 plot lines. This one I think was done right. And it just says, 10 years after fleeing home, Nina is the chief stewardess on the super yacht Serendipity, single by choice and perfectly content with how her life has turned out. But Nina's ex-coworker and old flame Irish chef Ollie isn't so happy with the status quo. 1 year after leaving yachting, he's returned as the Serendipity's chef with an ultimatum. If Nina continues to deny she's in love with him at the end of this charter season, he'll go back to Ireland for good. And this book jumps around a lot time-wise. Like, there was even one point when it was like 3 months later.
Whoa.
It with like still quite a bit left, and so you know something's gonna go downhill. But I thought it was very realistic. And I feel like instead of being like, oh, I'll love you for your problems, he's like, I'll wait, but you need to figure out your problems. And like she ends up like going to therapy for like she's had like a rough childhood and those kinds of things, which I thought was realistic because, I mean, sometimes you just can't be in a relationship with someone when they have issues to that extent that they're gonna then project on you. And I feel like that's not really talked about in a rom-com setting. So it was still like, I thought like funny and their banter was good, but then it still had like realistic literary fiction topics in it too. And I like them both as characters individually too. So yeah.
Okay. The next book I picked up was The Summer of Yes by Courtney Walsh. And I think this might be my favorite Courtney Walsh book of all time,
Whoa.
Even more than The Happy Life of Isadora Bentley. And I didn't think it was going to be at first, but she came through. So this follows our main character, Kelsey, who is a book editor. And one day she's like having this book is like kind of Devil Wears Prada vibes, and maybe you'll catch my drift in a little bit. So she's like out picking up everyone's Starbucks orders because like the assistant has called in sick for the day, so she's having to like run all these errands that she shouldn't have to be running. But she's carrying her Starbucks down the road and she gets hit by a car. And she wakes up in the hospital and she is like sharing a room with this woman who's like, at first she's like, she seems familiar, and then she realizes who she is. And it's this famous like business executive woman who has this like world famous cosmetics line named Georgia Tate, and she very much gives Miranda Priestley vibes. She's grouchy and like snarky and looks down on everyone, and she's like little and petite and like she's getting older. And so they're sharing this room, and she's like, why is she in the hospital? Because she doesn't seem to have anything wrong with her. Well, then as time goes on with her sharing this room, she learns that she's sick and her kidneys are failing. So they have like this exchange. Georgia's like super grouchy to her and is like, why are you bothering me? I don't even want to talk to you. So Kelsey gets discharged from the hospital, but she is like, for some reason, very attached to Georgia, and she doesn't know why. Like she feels very drawn to like almost get her out of her like funk, if you will, because she just seems so grouchy. And so she decides that she is going to make Georgia go on this road trip, and they're going to say yes to things together that they normally would say no to. So Kelsey takes like a leave of absence from her work because she's like feels just very stuck in her life and feels like all she does is work. And then Georgia has like this severe medical condition where if she doesn't get a kidney donor, she's going to die. So she takes her on this road trip and finds out that Georgia has basically like, even though she's successful, it hasn't come without cost, and it's all been at the cost of losing her family. She's lost her relationship with her only son and her husband. And so she's like, in her mind, going to try to like help her get her family back together. But Georgia's son just so happens to be Kelsey's age. So there's things that transpire there. But it was just, I don't know.
I had no idea what that was even about.
It was very, I don't know. It was just, I feel like Courtney Walsh has like cutesy romance. Yeah, she has like cutesy romance books that are like fun. But then this book and The Happy Life of Isadora Bentley, it's like, it's fun and cute, and she has great banter and stuff like that, and some romance. But it's like, there's this deeper undertone in all of her books, and it like slowly starts coming out as the story progresses, and I really love that about her writing. So this was a high 5 stars for me. I really loved it. I would reread it for sure, and I'm gonna make Emmalynn read it. So I'm in like a major historical fiction era, And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that our family is rewatching the series Turn. Well, this is the third time I've watched it. The second time Emmelynn's watched it, we're finally getting our younger daughter Ellie to watch it, so it's her first time. But I just really have enjoyed like being entertained by history, as weird as that might sound. And
it speaks for itself.
Like there's so much still to learn about history that's so fascinating. But I decided to pick this book up, and I actually read it on my Kindle because it's on Kindle Unlimited, but I've had this for a while. But this is called The Girl in His Shadow by Audrey Blake. If you liked, I haven't read the Anatomy series, but I feel like this gives very similar vibes.
Mm-hmm.
So this is set in like Victorian London, and it follows our main character Nora, who at the beginning her family dies, but the doctor that was tending her family at the time, she was very sick, but she's the only one that survived, and so he ends up like taking her on as his ward. And he's actually not just a doctor, he's a surgeon, like very famous in the London area. He teaches at like universities and other hospitals and all of that. But at this time it was illegal for women to be doctors or surgeons. So he's taught her a lot of things in secret, especially, so he like has this arrangement with grave diggers to bring him bodies that he can do autopsies on for learning purposes, and she helps him with that. And so it would be very dangerous if anyone ever found out that she was doing that as a woman. But there, one day, another doctor shows up at their house, and he's like, hey, Dr. Croft hired me to be like his apprentice. And she's like, why? Like in her mind, she's like, why does he need an apprentice? He has me, I do all of these things. But she can't do them publicly. So he ends up like coming and working at their clinic and studying at the hospital that Dr. Croft teaches at. Something ends up happening that makes them kind of like be under investigation. But it's just really fascinating. And the author of this book, I don't know if she did like extensive research or if she has medical knowledge somehow, but like the language and the way that she explains things that are happening in this book seem very scientifically accurate. So I don't know how she obtained that knowledge.
You've got to read Stocking Jack the Ripper. It's like this book, but
Halloween. Oh, this is her first book.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. She is two people. Yeah. It says Audrey Blake has a split personality because she is the creative alter ego of writing duo Jama Fixon and Regina Suros, two authors who met as finalists of a writing contest and have been writing together happily ever since. Wow, that's crazy. Well, that's cool. I didn't know that. Well, they're very smart women, apparently, and definitely did their research before writing this book. But there is a second book that follows, I just forgot her name, Nora's journey, like, after this book takes place. I don't know that I will read it because the reviews aren't as high as this book. But if that's something you're interested in knowing, it is a duology. All of the books I read in July. I was gonna say June. I would say this was definitely my favorite. What was yours?
Probably just the Paradise series.
Yeah,
honestly, because it felt like really just one long book.
Yeah,
because they all pick up literally right where the other one left off. So it's hard to really discern them.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, well, if you're watching this video, let us know what your favorite book for the month of July was, and if there are any maybe we need to add to our TBR. And we will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.